Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, Capitol Bureau Chief and host of Under the Dome. Today's episode is sponsored by Duke Energy. I'm joined today by my politics team colleagues, Esther Frances, who covers the legislature and lobbying, and Ronni Butts, who is one of our politics intern extraordinaires, back for her second summer of the weird schedule legislature. So I'll get that out right away. We're recording this on Monday, July 27th. If you're listening to this Tuesday morning, half of the lawmakers are back, or maybe not numerically, but half of the two chambers is back. Unless some sort of craziness happens, it looks like the General Assembly session this week is just the Senate. So that's the adjournment resolution when they left right before Independence Day after passing the budget. We're watching a few things that could bubble up there. We'll talk more about that later in the show. Some other both national and state news I wanted to let listeners know about if you didn't already. There are 2 soldiers that were stationed at Fort Bragg that were killed recently, Sergeant Michael E. Swinton and First Lieutenant Tyler J. Feehan, if I'm saying his name right. Feehan and 2 other soldiers were killed at an air base in Jordan by Iranian ballistic missile and drone attacks, according to Associated Press. We also have coverage in the NNO and the Charlotte Observer about both of their deaths. Swinton was killed during a controlled detonation of an Iranian drone in Iraq. So just wanted to get that information out there. I wrote more about it in our Sunday Under the Dome newsletter focused on the governor. And then Ronni and Daniel Battaglia wrote about it in one of our Under the Dome newsletters this past week. So now here talking more on Under the Dome, the podcast. Ronni, I'm going to lead off with you. You've been covering ICE and immigration issues lately. And really the biggest news, which isn't just state, also national, is a new ICE detention facility opening in Hertford County. So tell us where is it? Why is this happening?
Right, yeah. So Immigration and Customs Enforcement is going to open up its very first detention center in North Carolina. This is according to reporting by the New York Times, who obtained some internal documents that prove this. This is a really big deal, like you said, because it is the first of its kind, the first center of its kind to be in North Carolina. This is all a part of the Trump administration's effort to increase detentions and increase deportations nationwide, and so North Carolina will be a part of this plan. This was something that advocates and locals have been speculating would happen for quite some time now. The Washington Post put out a story last year showing some internal ICE documents that showed different detention centers or correctional facilities that were being considered to be reopened as ICE detention centers. And Rivers Correctional Institution in Winton, North Carolina was one of those centers. Now, the center is in northeastern North Carolina, right up towards the Virginia border. It's an area in the state that has a relatively high poverty rate. It has 34% of residents are below 150% of the poverty threshold. Also, their unemployment is a bit higher than the state average unemployment rate. And so part of the appeal for some people for this facility is that it may bring jobs to the area.
How would it bring jobs? I guess what would it do? Would these already be employees that are like from ICE and other states, or is it like you think there would be new hiring or something like that around it?
Well, that's part of the part that is a bit unsure at the moment. I mean, an internal or an unnamed state official told the New York Times that the facility could be opened up as early as late September. And so in that time, there's some times for putting out hiring posts and things like that, but we're not exactly sure where those employees may come from at this point. But Rivers Correctional Institution was closed back in 2021, meaning that many jobs in that area were lost. And that facility was closed because the Biden administration at the time released an executive order calling for the Biden administration to cut ties with for-profit prisons in order to help decrease people being arrested and detained, and also to limit the for-profit interest.
So what has it been? Has it just been sitting empty these past couple of years that you're
Yeah,
aware
so
of?
there's been no inmates in the prison since 2021, but the facility never closed. And so they still have some facility managers and administrators that are still there at that facility. And so because it didn't close, there's been some construction happening at that facility, which has tipped off some of the local residents and made them a bit concerned, thinking that it may be opening up soon. Residents saw increased construction on the property. They saw a fence go up. Construction trucks and other personnel going in and out of that property. And because it was never closed, that was able to happen. And so residents have been calling for local government officials to try and stop this from opening. And also they protested at the legislature calling for this detention center to not be opened in North Carolina.
So tell us more about this protest. This was in front of the legislative building here this past week.
Yes, so last week about 100 protesters gathered at the legislative building, and this was a protest/vigil. So the first part, protesters were advocating against this detention center. Now, at the time, it was still speculation. A couple of days later, it ended up being confirmed by the New York Times. They also spoke out against ICE action in general and called out immigration authorities for their discussions and actions with people that they have detained that may have been violent and may have caused them harm. Then the events transitioned into a vigil where they acknowledged people that have been killed either in custody of immigration agencies or have been killed directly from immigration authorities.
What are the things we don't know yet that you'll be thinking about, like in these coming weeks, like with the facility out in Hertford County or anything else? Like what are the things that you're wondering or trying to get answers to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about hiring, like you said earlier. Will these be people that are moved from elsewhere within ICE already, or will it actually be hiring people from that local community? That's something that I'm wondering. I also would love to know when exactly it would open. One official said it could be as early as late September, but it also could be extending later into the year. So that's also something that's uncertain. And then also, one advocate that I spoke to mentioned her concerns about the toll this may be putting on local law enforcement. Obviously, this is something that is an extremely contentious issue, and there's already many advocates in that area that are advocating against this facility opening up. And so I would anticipate there would be many protesters, either coming from within that community or elsewhere in North Carolina, maybe also from Virginia, since they're right along that border. And so I'm wondering how Hertford County local law enforcement will be trying to enforce safety in that area. And overall, just wanting to see how that detention center will change the county.
Okay. And then you've written another totally different story about immigration recently, about Haitian immigrants, a story that just published this morning. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so there are about 13,000 Haitians in North Carolina. We don't know how many of those individuals have temporary protected status, but that's what this video highlighted. Right now, hundreds of thousands of Haitians in the United States are at risk of losing their temporary protected status. This is a status that allows people from countries that are going through natural disasters or they're going through some sort of event that is making the country unsafe. It allows them to come to the United States temporarily to kind of seek refuge until it is safe for them to return. And so Haiti has been going through years and years of unrest. They've had several natural disasters, a cholera outbreak, and that has caused their TPS in the United States to be extended for many, many years. And the Supreme Court recently gave the Trump administration the leeway to terminate their TPS if the administration so chooses. And right now, Haitians in North Carolina are kind of in this in limbo period where they're unsure about what is going to happen with their temporary protected status. And so in this story, I talked to members of the Haitian community to ask what they're thinking and how their neighbors are feeling. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to talk to anybody with TPS because those individuals were afraid to come forward and feel like anything that they say that could be remotely identifying could put them further at risk. And so the story just talks about what the community has been doing to help each other, what kinds of resources do they share, and what they would be going back home to if they return back to Haiti.
Okay, we're going to shift gears after the break and hear from Esther about things with DEQ regulations and then also the ABC Commission changes. We'll be right back.
This message is sponsored by Duke Energy. Duke Energy is a North Carolina-based company dedicated to powering the state's continued growth and supporting economic development across communities. To learn more, go to agree.duke-energy.com. This message is sponsored by Duke Energy.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Capitol Bureau Chief Dawn Vaughan, here with Ronni Butts and Esther Frances. As I mentioned before we took the quick break, Esther has been writing about changes to the Department of Environmental Quality Regulations in the budget. So what's going on?
Yeah, for sure. So the budget mandates the DEQ to adhere to certain critical infrastructure permitting processes. There is a specific process called Fast 41, and it's from an Obama-era act that was hoping to increase the speed of these sort of quote-unquote critical infrastructure projects. During President Donald Trump's 2 terms, he has added critical minerals very heavily into that definition, as well as critical energy infrastructure projects, which in the budget, that critical energy infrastructure is defined as nuclear energy, as well as gas plants and gas pipelines, all in the hopes for energy. And so what Fast 41 does is it expedites environmental review processes so that hopefully these projects can get deployed faster. So the budget requires DEQ to comply with a lot of these things. And the DEQ is currently now reviewing the bill language and seeing how they're going to implement that.
So they haven't said anything yet, like what they think either way, or?
Definitely not. And I think we have seen that across a lot of different agencies where the budget, comes out is so new. And now these agencies are taking the time to thoroughly read and see how implementation will go in the future.
There's still a lot to unpack in there. So tips always welcome to us about things that we haven't seen yet, aren't on our radar.
Absolutely.
Or are, but like a little more details about how they ended up in there, what's the actual impact, right?
For sure. And even if DEQ isn't willing to say necessarily how they feel about Fast 41, environmental advocacy groups definitely are. Both the Sierra Club and the Southern Environmental Law Center have commented on the Fast 41 process itself, saying that there's potential for environmental harm just because with such an expedited review, environmental review, it could, not be as thorough as maybe it should be, which can, again, pose threat to the environment.
Okay. Something else that you've been covering, like off topic, also has to do with, I guess, everything, regulation of some sort. So North Carolinians who are tapped into the liquor scene have the opportunity to weigh in on pricing. So what's the ABC Commission up to now?
Absolutely. So the ABC Commission right now is studying potentially setting a baseline price for liquor, such as whiskey, vodka. The state law currently says that the commission sets the prices, and hearing from the commission themselves, the things like distillery pricing, as well as different markups, that kind of makes up retail pricing now. So it would be a government mandated floor for these different types of liquor. And the commission said it's looking at the impact on public health and safety, as well as impact on overall sales as potential reasons to set that floor.
So like a minimum pricing floor for, I mean, there's some liquor out there that's really cheap already.
Right.
So, I mean, that would make it like more expensive or less or like.
Potentially more expensive, which is why several groups have come forward to say this floor is not needed. It's just going to raise prices already for consumers as well as businesses who are right now struggling to figure out their budgeting.
So if Senators Club and Aristocrat are suddenly like expensive, then I have a feeling like the other stuff is going to get even more expensive.
Yeah, and that's another thing that advocacy groups are saying is that people could potentially now be going to other states, at an even higher rate than they currently are to purchase alcohol. But if, you at home have particular feelings about this, public comment is open until July 29th, which is Wednesday. You're able to just send it to a commission email, and the findings of this study, as well as I'm sure the public's comments and these research findings are going to be presented at an August meeting on August 12th.
And your story just published, right,
Yes.
on Monday.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, y'all. So one more reason to read the News and Observer. So again, I talked at the beginning about how the Senate is back, and it's Monday. Like we're actually just before they're going to gavel in and out. That's what we assume they're doing. Our colleague Luciana Perez-Uribe is over in the Senate to see if anything comes up there. And there's one committee meeting late afternoon on Monday. But I feel like a lot of unknowns, like there's chatter about there's going to be some conference report, which sounds like you're giving a presentation, but it's really, it means a bill that only gets an up or down vote. That's something entirely new than what you've already read in previous versions of the bill. So it's one of those fun, I guess, surprises that we have at the legislature. That's one thing I've heard about. And then also potentially a budget technical corrections bill, which could be super long and boring, or it could have a lot of interesting things buried in there, which is kind of sort of how the legislature works. What are you guys watching? Ronni, is there anything you're on the lookout for?
Yeah, I'm wondering if we'll have a regulatory reform conference report. That's something that I'm keeping my eye out for. I'm also looking to see if a bill to close the Blue Ridge tax loophole will make an appearance in the Senate. That had already passed the House, and they had seemed to have a strong bipartisan support for closing that tax loophole.
Yeah, this is the property tax loophole that a lot of counties, I think Wake maybe that was the worst hit on property tax exemptions for housing groups that are tied to nonprofits, and it ends up giving a pretty big tax break to commercial businesses too. So it was very non-controversial, had a lot of support, but somehow didn't make it across the finish line yet.
Yeah, there's some lobbying that's happening in the Senate, which some representatives have told me that may be giving some senators some pause at the moment, but they've had quite a long break, and maybe over that time they've been doing some negotiations to see if they can push that through before they go home again.
Okay, Esther, what are you on the lookout for?
Yeah, for sure. Our colleague Kyle Ingram is off this week, so stepping in for him to be on the lookout for this elections bill that did make it through the House and is now onto the Senate as well. Next week, when the House most likely is back in session, be looking out for a potential override to Governor Stein's veto on a bill that would ban homeless encampments statewide.
And the Senate hasn't taken up one of the DEI overrides. Kyle left me a pre-write, so I'll be following that if that ends up happening this week. So I'm going to segue that into my headliner, which is the House versus Senate rivalry. In the 7-ish years that I've covered the legislature, I can't remember a time where the House and Senate were disagreeable with each other, I guess, to the point that they're not even back the same week. I feel like there has been times where they both, we know it like, day by day, they're not always in session at the same time. But this is interesting where they took a big break and then their adjournment resolution has them back on the 27th, but just the Senate is coming and the House isn't. The Conference of State Legislatures is meeting. So that's one of the reasons that they're not not back. The House is expected back next week. So they're kind of spacing things out for logistics. This is great for reporters because a lot of our days are when they adjourn at the same time and you're trying to talk to lawmakers in both chambers, that makes things hectic. So we appreciate you guys spacing stuff out a little bit, but also the gears of government grind a little more to a halt because there's not that back and forth of what kind of action they're doing. So my headliner is House versus Senate. Ronni, let's move on to your headliner, which is also about a versus rivalry.
We were having this discussion before we started filming. As a Charlotte native, I was saying that Charlotte is the best city in the world. I think I have to revise that to at least say North Carolina. I don't know that I can say the world. But living in Raleigh, I do like Raleigh too, and we were having a debate on which city was better. Yeah. I think that having the Charlotte Hornets and the Carolina Panthers in one city gives us some leverage. I know we have the Stanley Cup champions here, but Charlotte has two teams.
We were just doing our mic check. We started talking about Charlotte, and I feel like as a Raleigh resident, it's my contractual obligation that I have to chime in with. No, I'm sorry, Raleigh is better than Charlotte. Agreed. Okay, Esther, also Raleigh-ite.
Yeah. I would say Raleigh downtown beats Charlotte uptown all day, every day.
I will have to agree with that, but the Charlotte vibes.
Okay, I don't know. Raleigh vibes are pretty great. I mean, we have a giant copper acorn in the middle of downtown. We have a super
awesome. We have a lot of
awesome.
Big things in Uptown Charlotte too.
Okay, we have
a
a
big Firebird statue.
Okay, I haven't seen that, but
we have
the really cool Capitol building. We have the Legislative building, which has some architectural appeal to some of us, or it's worn us down into thinking that. Of course, there's the Hurricanes. We don't have an MLB team yet, but we could, and the Durham Bulls are fantastic. So totally separate city. Durham is only an airport. Just got to put that out there. They're two individual cities. Durham is a great city too. I covered Durham for a long time. I feel like I just have to add that disclaimer. But Raleigh is home. Raleigh is great.
As a North Carolina Central University student, I also have to represent Durham as well.
Okay, Esther. Anyone else? Any other city that you want to make sure we're not leaving out?
Honestly, no. I think that covers it just about fine.
Okay, so Raleigh is number one.
Agreed.
Durham is number two. Charlotte is.
If I have to be outnumbered in that way, I'll take it, I guess.
All right. Well, y'all can
704 though.
Y'all can chime in and send us your feedback. This is all good-natured, of course. Come on, people. Everybody,
Yes, oh, for sure.
Okay, we are over on time now. Esther, I'm going to go real quick to you for your headliner.
Really quick. It's another controversial one. I recently saw The Odyssey, and I will have to say it was definitely not my favorite Christopher Nolan ever, and I did unfortunately have to give it a 2 out of 5. I completely understand why people do like it. For me, the dialogue was just a little bit too quick. No spoilers, by the way. The dialogue was just a little bit too quick, a lot of jump cuts, but it was beautifully shot. I enjoyed it in theaters. I think if you're going to see it, you probably should see it in theaters. It's probably the place to do it. So
definitely see it in theaters. Esther and I have to disagree on this. I give it a 10 out of 10, but that's okay.
I haven't seen it. It just looks a lot of gray. I mean, I don't know. I like war movies and adventure, but it's not raising the level for me yet. Definitely. Maybe I'll watch it on a home screen.
It is also a long movie, which we've had some conversation with coworkers. We need to bring back intermissions for movies. I think if you're going to be nearly 3 hours, give me
let everyone take the restroom break at the same time.
Absolutely.
Go refill your drink.
Yeah, because I don't want to miss anything.
Exactly. So. All right. Well, we can have extend our takes in future Under the Dome episodes, and of course follow all our coverage. We'll tell you what's going on with the Senate and then the House next week. For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan with Esther Frances, Ronni Butts, and producer Kevin Keister. Thanks for listening to today's episode, sponsored by Duke Energy, and we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome and NC Insider, and sign up for our weekly political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.